So let's start using our context. For this, in this function component, we use the useContextReact hook from React, as you learned, and we use it here in the header card button for a start. Now we will also need to import the context itself. So we need to import card context, not the card provider, but the card context object from going up, store card context. We don't need the provider component, but really the context itself. And then we can call useContext and pass this card context to it. To get access to this card context, which is managed by the closest provider, which is this card provider used in the app component, inside of the header card button. We simply can store this access, this object, this context object, in a card CTX constant, but this name is up to you, of course. Now, by using useContext here, the header card button component will be re-evaluated by React whenever the context changes. And it, of course, changes when we do update it in the card provider component. So now we established this connection. And we can now use this to output our number of card items. For this, we can add another constant here. Number of card items sounds like a descriptive name. And here we want to get access to card context dot items. And you could now think that you simply use the length of that array to get the number of card items. This could work depending on how you write your card logic, but I don't want to add every item as a new entry in that list. Instead, if we add, let's say, 3 pieces of sushi, I want to add 1 item to the card items array, but set the amount for that item to 3. So then the length would be wrong because it's just 1 item in the card items array, but there are actually 3 meals inside of it. Simply because inside of our card items array, we'll have objects where for every kind of meal, we store the amount of meals of that type is part of the card. So therefore, the proper way to derive that number of items is to access card items, so card context.items, but then use the reduce method on that. Reduce is a built-in method. In the end, it is a method which allows us to transform an array of data into a single value, into a single number in this case. For that, it takes 2 arguments. The first argument is a function, which will be called for you. The second argument is a starting value, and you'll see why it's a starting value in a second. Here we use 0. This function, which is passed in as a first argument, then receives 2 arguments itself, automatically by JavaScript, which is calling that function for every item in that array on which you're calling reduce. That's the current number, however you want to name it, and then the item at which it's currently having a look. And current number will be different for every item it's calling it. Item will also be different, but this is basically a number, a value, which is carried on across executions. Initially it's 0, but then after the first time this function has been executed, it will be the result which you returned in that previous execution. And here I want to return current number plus item.amount. Because my card items objects will have an amount field which stores the number of items per item type. And this will now reduce this array to a single number, and it's this number of card items which will be output down there. Now if we save this, we see 0 here in our or on our card button. Therefore, as a next step, let's make sure we can actually add card items.